All right, welcome to the LA Soccer Hub Show. My name is Gio Garcia. Today is Thursday, January 28th. Today we're talking LAFC, man. There's been a lot of stuff going on, just a lot of rumors, a lot of speculations, and a lot of things also going on in the world with the market. There's a lot of things going on with Robinhood, crazy things. I wish I would have invested in GameStop. Would I don't know if I would have bet my life savings like some of those people have, but it is crazy. But here to help me talk about LAFC, we got Kevin Baxter. Kevin, how you doing?
Don't ask me about the stock market. I have no idea how that works.
So you did not bet your life savings on GameStop?
No,
You
but
weren't
my
one of
son,
those people?
my son was a manager at a GameStop out here in the Santa Cruz Valley. So I know about GameStop. There's no way I would have invested in it, but I've been to GameStop.
Yeah, no, it's crazy what's going on, man. It's like I guess the little people are able to somehow control the stock market. I have a Robinhood account, and I'm just checking it. I was just saw it, and one of the things that was going on was that you couldn't trade GameStop because it was going so high, and I guess the hedge fund people. So I checked my Robinhood account, and I see that GameStop you're not able to trade it, and then crazy things. There's a lawsuit filing, so many different things. But I wish I would have bet, or at least I would have put like $10 or something. I would have had like $300-400
I
now.
do know enough about this that know that it involves short selling, which is a market mechanism that very wealthy people use that they have access to. And with hedge fund managers, it makes them billions and billions of dollars on the short sell, taking advantage of a company that is not doing well, buying their stock at a depressed price. Um, and now with Robinhood, as you said, the people kind of took over. The people decided, to band together and to sort of monkey up the system a little bit. And it's funny. I've been watching on social media some of the hedge fund traders very upset about this, that someone caught onto their game and actually rigged it for them, and now they're the ones losing money. And I guess part of me feels like it's about time that the little guy got to have a say here.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. Obviously, I'm not a big guy or anything like that, but it's funny seeing some of those bigger people, kind of complain about it. Obviously, that money. And I think I saw one tweet. I don't know who it was, but it was like they're like, "Wait, you're telling me that the stock market has been rigged? Today's the first day that it's been rigged." Kind of just jabbing at what's been going on, and then you have people like Elon Musk that are helping kind of push the movement too. I think he tweeted about GameStop and it just exploded. But it's crazy. I know we're not stock experts or anything like that, but I just thought it was interesting with all that going on. I was curious if you had invested any of the money out of that. I was too late. I don't think I would have invested any of that money because I don't have that much knowledge, and I just just barely even dabble in anything. But nevertheless, we'll talk some LAFC. So yesterday, Kevin, yesterday announced the signing Jordan Harvey. Jordan's a veteran. He's been with the team since the start, since even before they had the stadium. This to me looks like a signing, that a signing kind of loyalty of a player that's been through the system, has been a locker room guy for LAFC. Obviously, I don't think this is a signing that it's gonna make an impact on the field. I think the signing's more of the intangibles that Jordan Harvey brings to the table. What were your initial thoughts on the signing?
I was surprised because Jordan Harvey, I think he's going to be 36. He played sparingly. He didn't get all that many minutes this last season. It may have been his lowest season in terms of minutes in his career, in his MLS career. And he plays outside back, which is a problem, an area where LAFC has problems. But the reason I think he's come back is because the team is very impressed with his leadership. He's become, in this last year with the pandemic and everything else, he's become a very outspoken guy in the locker room. He's a player that other players, teammates respect. He's been able to speak up and bring the team together in some of these difficult times. But I think even more to the point, he is a guy that can be almost a coach on the field. I mean, there's only so much that Kenny Arena, who's the defensive coach, and Bob Bradley, who's the manager, there's only so much that they can say. And when you have a lot of young players coming up, even Marco Farfan, who's coming over, I think he's 22, 23. He's a young player with national team cap already. Jordan Harvey can sort of bring those guys along, teach them not only about the play on the field, And Jordan can play a number of different positions, so he can speak to anybody on that back line, but also about MLS, about travel, about, how to comport yourself with a lot of players coming over, especially these young foreign players, Traore and others. I think they need somebody that can kind of show them the ropes. You're not going to go ask Bob Bradley, hey, what kind of clothes should I bring on this road trip? Or you're not going to ask, Kenny Arena, some of those locker room questions that, coaches aren't there for that. This is what teammates do. And I think Jordan Harvey is a guy that does that. He's not expensive. He'd probably make, I'm guessing it's be somewhere around 200,000. And if you get an extra coach and a guy that can play some minutes at some point, that's good. This is going to be a very tough season. We haven't seen the schedule yet. We know that the union and the league are still negotiating a collective bargaining agreement. But what we do know is they're going to play 34 games. There's going to be a lot of guys going away for international duty. LAFC has about a half dozen national team players. They'll be going away for international duty. We're going to have the Gold Cup. We're going to have U.S. Open Cup. There's going to be a lot of games. And having a guy like Jordan Harvey, a veteran guy that can step off the bench and play a few minutes in some of those games, really going to be a big help.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think it's definitely an add-on, a player, like you said, player coach, right? Just to have there. And I think Jordan Harvey being able to be there and answer some of those questions and also being, that veteran guy. And I think and he's also a guy that stays ready no matter what. We saw him towards the end of the season. He got some minutes and, he just stayed ready, right? He was the veteran and then the players that the young players could look up to. And I just kind of want to read a quote what John Thornton said about him. He said, Jordan has been an integral part of our club since joining us ahead of their inaugural 2018 campaign. Not only has he brought a wealth of experience and leadership to the locker room, he has also served as a fantastic ambassador in our community, end quote. And I think just obviously the work that he's done outside the field definitely earned him this 1-year contract. I know a lot of people I've been seeing online that, they're a little bit maybe upset about the signing because of his age and stuff. But I think you have to have a locker room guy. And I think this is one of those locker room guys that you're going to need to have, especially, last year you had some of those the social distress and the, social justice things going on. I think Mark Anthony said, I could be wrong, but I think Mark Anthony said that Jordan Harvey was one of those players that stood behind him and, was saying that he also wasn't going to play. And I think that just speaks volumes, and you need a player like that. So I think it's going to go a long way. And I think, like you said, there's going to be times that when the international players get called up, for international play, Olympics, I don't know if that's still going to happen, but there's going to be Gold Cup. So a lot of different things, and that's when Jordan Harvey can come in and play some of those minutes when their depth is going to be tested. So I do see this as a locker room guy type signing. Of course, it's only a 1 year, but I can also see Jordan Harvey staying within the LAFC organization, even after he decides to hang up his boots. I don't know if it'll be after this year, but I could definitely see him if he's interested being a head coach, being a coach, or being within that system. Whatever opportunities come from him, and he also loves to broadcast as well. So yeah, it's pretty good.
He's turned 37 this month, so he'll be a 37-year-old this season. He played 11 games, 11 of LAFC's 22, 8 starts. That's his lowest numbers since he really broke into MLS 2007 with Colorado. He didn't play at all. So since he became a player, a regular, those are his lowest numbers. It's the lowest number of games he's played. And I remember talking to him last year after the 2019 season when he was out of contract the first time. And he said he didn't know whether he was going to come back. And he seemed at that point very nervous about his future. Obviously, they did bring him back and liked what he saw. I think he is one of those guys that's going to go on probably to become a coach or be involved in the game somewhere. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Todd Donovan when he was with the Galaxy, a guy who's not flashy. He's just there. He's solid. He answers the bell, doesn't make a ton of mistakes, isn't flashy, isn't someone you're going to, on the drive home, say, wow, that Jordan Harvey, he had a great game. But he's solid, and he's a very smart player. One of the things you saw from him last year, I don't know if you've noticed this, but when you get to be later in the later stages of your career, you lose some of your athleticism. He's not as fast. He can't jump as high, but he's smarter now. And I saw Jordan Harvey taking a lot of interesting routes to the ball where he wouldn't have to run as far, but he would get there quickly because he could cover a short bit of ground much faster, as opposed to getting in a 40-yard sprint with an opponent. He might only run 20 yards and he'd get there first. Just the positioning and the knowledge of the game and the anticipation, those are some of the things that Jordan Harvey brings. So even though he is 37, he at times he will play a little bit younger just because he's so much smarter now and has an experience.
Yeah, and I think we saw that towards the end of the season when he was able to be back in the lineup. We saw him have a better second half of the season. I know he struggled early in the beginning of the season, but I think that just also comes with experience and understanding the type of system he's in. They're gonna want to push up and play that offensive attacking with the 4-4-3 formation. And I think he just really understands that, and he could really guide the young guys moving forward. Another thing that last week, they have also announced that they finally announced the signing of, Jesus Mourinho, the center back. They ended up, I'm assuming they own his rights now. He's an LAFC player. And I think that, to me, that was one of the core pieces that they had to get done for the LAFC defense in the back. I mean, we saw what they brought. They brought the Korean player, Kim Moon-won, and then, Marco Fafan, all the different signings. But I think that centerpiece of having Jesus Mourinho there, I think is going to really make everything looks good on paper. What are your initial thoughts of the LAFC defense?
Well, and right now you look at the roster too, they're at 25 players. They only have room for 5 more. So it's coming together pretty early. Training camp starts February 22nd if there's a collective bargaining agreement. So they've still got 3 weeks to go, and they only really need to add 4 or 5 pieces. When you look at the defense, the way it's going to line up, I think Moon and Farfan are your 2 outside backs, obviously. Segura and Mourinho, those are the guys you're looking at to be Murillo, to be your center backs. That leaves Christian Blackman, a guy that just got his first call up from the national team. He doesn't have a spot. We know Jordan Harvey is a bench player, and that's going to be his role. And then there's some really good young players like Traore and others. That's a solid defense, certainly an improvement over last season, where they gave up 1.77 goals a game. That's the most LAFC has given up per game. You can't look at season stats because it was only 22 games. But 1.77 goals a game, that's by far the worst that they've given up. In fact, they gave up more goals last year in 22 games than they gave up in 34 the year before. So the defense looks solid, and Blackman is being your first guy off the bench because he can play center back, he can play outside back, he can play both sides. He's better as a right back. But that's what you really need, because you don't want to have to change the whole team. So let's just say, for example, Segura can't play. Blackman can come in and play that position. Let's say Farfan's injured. Maybe you can move Blackman into that position, or Jordan.
Chiqui Palacios too on that side too.
Palacios too. You don't have to redo all 4 positions. You just plug one guy in, and everyone else stays in the position where they're comfortable. I think that's a big advantage. I think the defense is much improved. We'll see how they play together. You do have some questions. You got some guys that Moon is brand new to the league. Farfan is new to the team and the approach. Maria, we don't know what, he was in there for, I think, 8 games last season. So he got a little bit of a taste. But we have to see if these guys gel and have chemistry. Behind them, though, I think is the big problem. Yes, Cisniega, who was good at times, not so good at other times. And then Kenneth Vermeer, who, frankly, I think they're kind of stuck with Vermeer. He's got a big contract. I just didn't see much of him last year. He plays the kind of style they want to play. He's a goalie who will play out of the back. He's kind of a sweeper keeper. He'll come off his line. But, his best days are clearly behind him. I think he tries to play as a younger player, and he's just not fast enough to do the things that he used to do. I think they still have a big question mark at goalkeeper.
Yeah, no, I went to just to finish the defender thing. Yeah, they look good on paper, and I like this defense a lot more. And I think you see a lot more depth. You're going to see a lot more depth in being able to plug in those different pieces. Now to the goalkeeper situation, I think that's going to be the biggest question. And because obviously the only thing that they addressed was adding a third goalkeeper was Tomas Romero, I believe is his name. He was a homegrown player from Philadelphia. He's not coming in and playing those minutes. So it's like you've had a shaky, inconsistencies with both keepers, and at times both keepers have played well, right? But they've been consistent. And I think if you're at LAFC, you don't have the trust. You don't really have the trust on either one of those. It's really a flip a coin. And I think for how this team is built, it would be unfortunate if they were to lose a game because of a goalkeeper mistake. That happens. You can live with one or a few goalkeeper mistakes, but I think because of the timeline and how the inconsistencies has happened, I think there is a lot of pressure for this goalkeeping in LAFC, and I don't think what we've seen the last few years from Pablo Cisneros at times makes you feel comfortable like he is the number one, and at times it doesn't. And other times you see Vermeer, and then it just shakes your head. And I still go back to this thing. I think like if you have two goalkeepers, you don't really have one main goalkeeper. And I think that's where the biggest dilemma and what we saw from last season, going back and forth and not really having the trust on, hey, this is our number one goalkeeper, or Pablo's going to be in candidate for me. I've just seen so much back and forth that I think they're going to have to make a decision here. And I have a feeling, I hope they don't, but I have a feeling this next season, whenever we assume is going to start in April, that, I think they may go back and forth this year. And I don't know if that's going to work out well for them.
Well, I think that's a mistake. And the reason I think it's a mistake is because they are two different, it seems to me, from what I've seen, they are two different kinds of goalkeepers. As I said, Vermeer loves to come off the line. He'll come way out of the box and almost be, another center back. And when he does that, his defense needs to know that he's there. They need to know where he is because they need to back up for him. They need, if a center back comes back and Vermeer's way out of the box, someone needs to go make sure that the goal is covered. Cisniega doesn't play that way. And so you're forcing your defenders into a situation where they turn around and it's like, oh crap, the goalkeeper's out of the box, I got to go. Or they turn around and charge the box and Cisniega's already there. Do you know what I mean? It's a bad, I think they are two, if they played a similar style, I think that would be okay. Another thing with Vermeer is, again, he was a really good goalkeeper earlier, and in his career, he's a little older now, he's in his mid 30s. And so he's beginning to try to make up for maybe some of the slower reflexes and the slower foot speed. He's trying to anticipate now to make up for that. And sometimes he guesses wrong. And that's when you see him way out of position on certain shots. But it's something that is sweeping MLS right now. The philosophy in MLS has always been the defenders and your goalkeeper. Those are American-born players. Those are domestic players. Why? Because the U.S. seems to produce goalkeepers was one conceit. And then the other part of was you're not going to spend a ton of money on your back line. Your DP money goes to your attacking midfielders, your forwards. That's where the money was spent. That's where the foreign players came in. And then you filled with domestic players on the back line and at goalkeeper. What we see LAFC has now, they'll start a back line with 3 foreign-born players. That's very unusual in MLS. And when you look around the rest of the league, those American goalkeepers, they're just not coming up anymore. You look at Galaxy, they went to Europe for their 2 keepers, Jonathan Klinsmann, who is American, but came off European clubs, started his career in Europe. And then they have Jonathan Bond, who came from the Premier League. So, and you see that, I think you're beginning to see that around MLS. I mean, Vermeer came from Holland.
Yep. You see that with, I was going to say, you see that with LAFC as well. And it's just, to me, you make such a great point because, American players have always, been known for, being, the defenders and the goalkeepers. And I wonder where the LAFC's academy is to produce a goalkeeper, right? Because there's so much, eventually get a goalkeeper from their academy, which is a hard task for any keeper, but to get, a homegrown player potentially to eventually get them and be their starter, I think that would be one of their goals. That I'm just speculating here, but you make a great point because I don't really feel like they have to go that far to get a goalkeeper. I don't really think they had to go all the way to Netherlands to bring a goalkeeper. After seeing the inconsistencies right within the MLS league, I feel like you could have got another goalkeeper, but I think they went overseas, and I don't think goalkeeper is that position that you want to go overseas and spend the amount of money LAFC did on that.
Well, they signed Vermeer using allocation money, so that means that it cost them at least $612,000. Typically, you don't spend that much on your goalkeepers. I mean, there have been some exceptions. Tim Howard is one. But Tim Howard, he's the greatest goalkeeper in U.S. soccer history. So that's a little bit different. Kenneth Vermeer is not Tim Howard. Yeah, it's not a place where teams have traditionally spent their money. LAFC is breaking that model in a lot of different ways. Again, 3 of their 4 potential starters in the back line are foreign players. None of them are DPs though. But traditionally, the money gets spent up front and the imports go up front and the back line is American, and LAFC is taking a different model. But I still don't think they've answered that goalkeeper question. And Cisniega came from Mexico, so both potential goalkeepers, and Romero is a Salvadoran international. So all 3 potential goalkeepers for LAFC, are foreign players. And you're right, they don't have that academy that the Galaxy does with Galaxy 2, where they can get a bunch of players, sign them, send them to the USL Championship, and let them play, and then bring them up on loan whenever they need somebody. With the 25 players that LFC has, that's it. They don't have a farm system like some other teams do, where they can have interchangeable parts.
Yeah, if you had to pick between Vermeer, and from what you've seen, right, from Vermeer and Pablo Cisnegas, and I'm just gonna put it this way, for him to play every single game, right, every single game this season, without injury, tournaments and everything, who would you put in as your goalkeeper?
I would pick Cisniega for a couple of reasons. One is because I just think Vermeer is a little long in the tooth. He's an older player. I don't see him getting better. He is what he is. If you look at that and say, okay, we can live with this, he was better, I thought, in Champions League at the end of the season, but still made some crucial mistakes. He is what he is. He's not going to improve. Cisniega is still a young player who hasn't played a ton of minutes. Yeah, he played some in Mexico, but I'd have to look back at his career. I don't know that he's ever been in a position where a team has said, you are the starter, you're going to play 90 minutes every week. I don't know that he's ever had anyone do that. If he did, you have to think, with his age and his relative, experience, he gets better as he gets more reps. I don't think Vermeer is going to. So I think you put Cisniega in there because I think right now he's better, but I also think he'll improve, where with Vermeer, he is what he is. You get what you get.
Yeah, and I'm with you. And I think that was my initial thought, but I think once they started Vermeer in the CONCACAF Champions Leagues, I think whatever confidence Pablo Cisnegas has had of him being the actual number 1 goalkeeper kind of just went out the window. And I think you could if you're LAFC, right, you got to rebuild that confidence in him if you are going to go with them. I just don't think the rest of going back and forth from goalkeeper to goalkeeper is really going to work. Unless there's an injury or something like that, I get it, but I think it would be 3 years in a row that they go a lot of back and forth, and I don't think that's something the fans. I don't think that's a recipe for success. I think you just got to ride with one of your horses and ride it out. But the next thing I want to talk about is a player you and I have talked about a lot. And I don't know if you remember this, but you and I actually had brought this up. I think it was like in December, before the players were actually going to CONCACAF, and I had mentioned to you, I was like, do you think that, either it was at the time, I was like, it was either Brian Rodriguez and Diego Rossi. I asked you, I was like, do you think that they hold off on not coming back for, 1, fear of injury, or 2, of lack of motivation? I brought that up because I was like, I could see that more of Brian Rodriguez happening. And now we look this week and, tweets from a Uruguayan journalist that I guess Brian Rodriguez was on a radio show or a TV show. I don't know, but this is a quote, and this is where it came from Brian Rodriguez. We are defining my future with my representative. I'm assuming his agent. I will not travel to United States until it is resolved. My wish is to go play in Europe. End quote. And then there's another quote that follows. He's like, there are many people who do not give much importance to Major League Soccer, but it helps you out a lot. There are great teams, people who want to grow. I have improved a lot of my physicality and speed, end quote. Just right off the bat, he doesn't mention anything about LAFC. He doesn't mention like, hey, I want to thank Bob Bradley and the staff. Hey, I want to do this. All he says is, I want to go to Europe. What were your initial thoughts on Brian Rodriguez forcing his way out of LAFC?
Well, we knew he wanted to go to Europe when he came over. This is not a surprise. Rossi wants to go as well. I don't like the strong arm tactics. I don't like the threats. I mean, I don't think that's going to be good for his career. I mean, the next team that signs him, probably part of the agreement is, hey, don't threaten us. If we're signing you, we want you to be here. Honor your contract. he still has a contract that he's still property of LAFC. Now LAFC may decide it's in their best interest to cut bait and get rid of him, and maybe that's why he's doing this. But he still has a contract. He's a young player. He's in an interesting position because I don't think he's proven himself in MLS. I think that he is a player that still has a lot of growing to do. It's the same with Julian Araujo, again, a guy with the Galaxy who's talked about Europe, and really needs to get his yellow card situation under control. He finds himself in bad positions, and teams are not going to want to take on a guy who's going to be carded every week and wind up spending half the season on the sidelines. Brian Rodriguez is not that situation, but he led the team in assists last year. He had 7 assists, didn't score a lot of goals. He's supposed to be a playmaker. He's done that at times. I just don't think he's ready for Europe, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I think Diego Rossi is, and I don't know what his situation is, how many feelers he's getting. I think Brian Rodriguez, he's a young player. I think he would be much better served in his career to spend at least one more year in MLS, play another full 34-game season, try to learn a little bit more, because when you get to Europe, the learning's over. When you get to Europe, you're a finished product. There are not coaches that are going to teach you things like they do in MLS. I think he would be better served to spend one more season in MLS, and I think financially it would be better. There was a report out the other day that the spending in the transfer market is down 25%, 23.4% over last year. The amount of money that teams are spending on transfers and the number of transfers are way down. Teams don't have any money because COVID. Everyone's dealing with this COVID situation. There aren't fans in the stands. TV contracts are down. Teams don't have money to spend. If Brian Rodriguez thinks he's a player that's going to go to Europe and make some money, he's going to make a lot more money if he waits 1 year. I think the other part of this, when you look at Rossi versus Rodriguez, Rossi, I think the guy that's more prepared to go to Europe now. Rodriguez played for the Uruguayan national team. He played in 2 World Cup qualifiers last fall. Rossi never got off the bench. So somebody sees something in Brian Rodriguez that thinks that he is a better player than Diego Rossi, thinks that he's, prepared to make that leap onto the next stage. And maybe that's gotten in Brian Rodriguez's head. Maybe he thinks like he can't learn any more in MLS. I think that's a mistake. I think one more season here would do him a world of good.
Yeah, I think it's. I'm with you. I don't think he's proven himself with MLS, but I think it's more than that. I think the relationship that he had, this to me just kind of proves a little more that the relationship that he might have had with LAFC, with Bob Bradley and the organization, was not good. Let's just put it that way. Pie was not good. It was Pie going out the door towards the end, and he wants his way out. He doesn't want to play for LAFC. I don't think in his heart was ever to be, his heart just, it's not with LAFC. And I don't think he's ready for Europe, but his mind is already set to go to Europe, and I just think LAFC kind of already knew that. And I think we knew there was rumors that Calgary, who the reports have been coming up, I think it was last transfer window, before this transfer window, they were trying to target him. And then Brian Rodriguez, through his agent, was trying to go, and his agent had been shopping him out. And I've been saying that if his agent's saying this, I'm pretty sure Brian Rodriguez is also feeling the same way and saying this as well. And I think for the second half of the season, his mind has already been, on his eyes has already been eyes on the prize, and is to go to Europe. And I think his love to play for LAFC has slowly gone away. And I don't think he has the motivation to go back and play for Bob Bradley in the system. I don't think their relationship was good. I don't know what caused it. I don't know what happened, but just reading body language, and I don't think he deserved to play those last few games. He never showed me or anybody that I thought he was a great player to have a DP spot. I really feel like LAFC overspent, and I think they had an opportunity last transfer window, whether it was what they wanted or maybe they didn't want the money, but now they're in a sticky situation. Well, Brian Rodriguez is forcing their hand, and he's not going to come back. And he's literally forcing their hand. And LAFC has never been in a situation like this. You're also talking about a player that's not the star of the team. He's probably the 3rd or 4th best player at best, right? But in his mind, he is ready to go. And I think that's where it gets tricky, because if you're LAFC, are you going to want to take the option that Calgary has, which I think it's right here. I was talking to the reporter. He said it's a loan option to buy, which could become an obligation to buy if Brian Rodriguez plays 75% of the games. And if you're LAFC, is that what you want? You want to go into that negotiation? And I think Brian Rodriguez, mine is like, hey, my agent's trying to get you guys deals, and you guys are declining these deals. I'm gonna force my way out through the media, and I think this is a tactic. I don't think it's the best way, but I don't really see LAFC. They have. I don't think they have any room to really wiggle with Brian Rodriguez and trying to bring him back. I don't think there's no way you bring him back after this. I think you just got to LAC has to take the best deal at the table at this point.
Well, we saw LAFC, pick up Corey Bayard from Real Salt Lake. A guy that can play anywhere along the front line, a guy that's been declining in his productivity, but a guy that fits the profile. I think one reason they did that was because the situation with both Rodriguez and Diego Rossi was a little bit volatile. They didn't know what was going to happen. They weren't quite sure going into this transfer window whether they'd have both back, if they'd have either back. So I think they tried to cover their bases. Corey Bayard is not Brian Rodriguez. Brian Rodriguez has may not be the best player that we thought he was going to be, but I think he's a better choice over Bayard. But if Brian Rodriguez does leave, we have some, Moose, Danny can play on that front line. I think Danny's probably the best fit because he's the one guy that they have in the front line that is could be a true center forward. Vela is better on the wing. Rossi is better on the wing. Danny can play in the middle. The other guys they have, Opoku, I think he's eventually going to take that Brian Rodriguez spot, whether Brian Rodriguez comes back or not. I think Opoku is going to get a lot of minutes on the wing. Again, not a center forward, but a very exciting player, a guy that could replace Rodriguez. And then Christian Torres, yeah, he's very young, but you need to get him minutes. You can't bring a guy up at 16, let him play a couple of games, and then all of a sudden put him on the bench. He's not going to develop. And again, they don't have a USL farm team for him to play. Christian Rodriguez has to play. So can LAFC move on from Brian Rodriguez? Yes. Do they have players that can play the position? Yes. With the possible exception of Opoku, if he's developed, probably inferior players. I don't think they're as good as Brian Rodriguez, but I don't think it's one of those team-changing moments. If they were to lose Brian Rodriguez, I think they could absorb that. The problem is the guys, Opoku, Christian Torres, those guys are very young, and then Danny doesn't have the experience that Brian Rodriguez has. So there would be a little bit of a learning curve.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that the Corey Bayard signing, I think once I obviously saw some of his film and how he plays in the wing, he's able to play there. And I'm with you. I think it's going to be between them, Danny Masevsky, Corey Bayard, Mahala. If they want to get that wing spot, but I think if Brian Rodriguez is gone, what it looks like. You also have a DP spot, right? And what do you use at DP spot? I know a lot of people have been calling they want a number 9 striker. And I know Danny Masevsky is that, but I think a lot of people want a big name to come and play for them. And I don't know if that's where they would use that DP spot is at the number 9. We know they got depth in the midfield, but you can always add more there. And like you said, Carlos Vela likes to play at the wing, and sometimes they have him play at the false 9. But I think it gets interesting for LAFC because you're going to have an open DP spot. I think the only way they're going to lose is maybe not negotiate a deal that they want with Brian Rodriguez, or they may just hold out and see what best offer they get. Because I don't think LAFC is going to get pushed around that much, but at the same time, I don't think you're going to want to hold on to to a DP spot. Which makes it more interesting. And I think they do have the weapons. I don't think they're going to miss out a lot on Brian Rodriguez. You definitely have the weapons, like you mentioned, Corey Bayard, Mahala, Danny Masevsky. You're going to bring a lot of those weapons in. But I think the conversation now is the open DP spot. And what do you do with that open DP spot? Where do you use that? Where do who you're going to bring in? And one of the names that's being rumored around, and this was brought up by the Extra Time guys from the MLS podcast, is Kun Aguero, who's 32 years old. The only thing is he's out of contract in 6 months. So one or two things for this to happen, LAFC would have to wait 6 months till the summertime for his contract to be over, or to buy out his contract, get a transfer fee, which I don't see LAFC doing. I don't really see this happening, but what are your initial thoughts? I know you're a Man City guy.
Yeah, well, the one first of all, with all of these rumors, and especially with us being in LA, you have to look at whether this makes sense. And one thing I've learned from agents is the more team names they can have attached to their player, the better it is. If you can say, oh, Tottenham wants us, or the West Bromwich Albion wants our player, the more names teams you can attach to that, the better. It makes the team that you're negotiating with think there's interest. And I say all that because anytime a European player is thinking of coming to the U.S., which teams are they going to? It's Galaxy and now LAFC. We hear about Anton Griezmann wants to come play with Carlos Vela, his buddy. He wants to come to MLS. We know that. But you don't hear them talking about, oh, I want to go to FC Cincinnati. I'd really love to go play for Sporting Kansas City. No, they want to come to the Galaxy and LAFC. And so those are the names that are always attached to these rumors. So you have to step back and say, okay, here's another rumor, a big name player. He's coming to LAFC. Does it make sense? And so when you look at this rumor, you know what? We just talked about they don't have a center forward. That's Sergio Aguero's spot. He would be great. He's still 32. He's sidelined for a month with a thigh injury. He's had injury problems lately, but still a productive player. I think he'd be a very good productive player in MLS. So you have a guy that has a couple years left, plays the position that you need. As you mentioned, he's out of contract at the end of the year. LAFC could wait for the contract to run out, or if Man City decides that they really don't need him anymore and he's not playing a lot, they could just let him go. It's in their interest to get him off their payroll and to just move on with him and not have this become an issue as the season ends and have, Kun Aguero going to the press and saying, am I going to be re-signed? What's going on? So it's in Man City's interest to move him if they decide he's not going to be an important player for them down the stretch. He fits a need at LAFC. Here's the big problem. His market value, which is not what he's going to get paid, but his market value is about $38 million. That's not going to happen. If they move Brian Rodriguez, they do get a designated player spot. They probably cannot afford to pay him more than Carlos Vela because of the dynamic of what would happen with that in the locker room. So you're looking at something around $5 million, $6 million for Kun Aguero. Would he want to come and play for that? Would LAFC want to pay him that? So you have to deal with all of these things. Having the DP spot open really helps. Bringing him into a position of need really helps. If they were to go down that road and start pursuing that, the message to me would be that LAFC needs to win now. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean, They brought a lot of really good young players. They're going to be good for a while. I mean, you look at Mahala and you look at Moon, even is 25. A lot of really good young players. But Kay, Blessing's only a young, a very young player, 22, I think. They're set for a long time. Diego Rossi's young if they keep him, but Vela's going to be 32 this season. Kun Aguero is 32. I think that would mean that they need to win now because they're star players. Vela, they're getting a little bit older, and the window may be closing on them. So if this generation is going to win an MLS Cup, they may feel that they need to do it now. If they were to go after Kun Aguero, that's what the message would be to me, because the other message is everything else they're doing is young, is youth-oriented. If they were to go to get a 30-some-year-old player and make him a DP, that tells me that they think that window's closing.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that, I think they want to LAFC, right? They haven't won outside of the supporters shield, which is very important, right? But they just came so close of winning, the CONCACAF Champions League. Last week, I think it was last week, I had, a fan, LAFC Live on the show, and, that's what they're hungry for. That's what that's what the organization is that silverware. And, I know that they have all this young talent, and it's not in their DNA to go out and get a 30-year-old player. And I think people may say Vela, but I think that was a different situation. He was the actual main piece, right? That was going to make everything work.
And he was only 28 at the time.
Yeah, 28 at the time as well. And I think if you get a player like Kun Aguero, that tells me LAFC is all in, or not just Kun Aguero, or a player like him, his caliber. Let's just say that. I think that will send a message to the fans and to everybody that's paying attention. The LAFC is ready to win now and ready to win everything this season. Not that they were, but with the opening of a DP spot, with the uncertainty of Diego Rossi, he he may leave as well, or he may come back next season. I mean, excuse me, or he may get transferred out this season. I think that would really send a message. I think that's a message that the fans want. I think that's something that potentially the organization may be open to doing if it's the right fit. It may be Kun Aguero. We have to see how his knee and everything is doing, or it may be a player like his caliber that feel that, hey, this player is really going to help Carlos Vela and the rest up top to help us win an MLS Cup. Now, do you need to spend all that money? I don't necessarily think so, but I do think you need to bring a player of caliber, like, because I don't think you need a younger talent. I could be wrong, but I don't know if you need a lot more talent, younger talent with that DP spot. I think if you bring in a solid, more mature player, he doesn't have to be 30 years old. He can be, I don't know, 28, 29. But I think if you bring in a more mature player, and if you bring in, if he's a number 9 spot, I think that's really gonna make things. I think that would make things work for LAFC and what their goals are to win silverware, because I feel like they have to win silverware. I don't think it's I'm not going to say they have to win silverware this year, but after coming so close last year, I think that taste in your mouth, you got to feel for them.
But you have to also look at the, when I told you again, like when rumors start to come up, and you have to say, does this fit? And you can make an argument that Kun Aguero fits because they do need a center forward. He fits in there.
He fits if he comes free.
Yeah, and if he's affordable.
Yeah.
But look at the messages that LAFC is sending, and how an Aguero signing, it does not mesh with that at all. Moon, again, 25. Farfan, 22. Bayard is mid-20s. All of the, the teenagers that they brought in, they had, I think, 6 or 7 guys under the age of 21 last year at one point on the roster. They are signing talented young players, cheap young players, but young players. Their LAFC is going after young players. They're different from the Galaxy. They're not going after big name established players. They're bringing in players here to teach them their system and to develop the system, and they're getting great players. I think Apoku is going to be a really, really good player.
I think so too. Yep.
So when you all of a sudden say, okay, we just signed 6 guys who are under 22. Oh, there's a 32-year-old guy. Let's go get him. It doesn't fit with the philosophy of the team. So this has to be a one-off. It has to be a very special situation. I think you can make an argument that it is, but it's certainly not the way that LAFC and John Thornton have gone around building this team.
It's not, but I think they did bring. Oh, this is a somewhat similar situation. They did bring in BWP. I know he wasn't a big sign,
and then they let him go. And then
exactly, they let him go. But I think
he had a good season. And they let him go.
I think they would. I think they would make it work if that was like a year thing or maybe a 1 or 2 year thing. But I'm with you. I don't really think this is an LAFC's DNA to do something like this. But if they do, that will send a message to your point that they're ready to win now and they're ready to win everything in MLS this year. I don't know. I think if he comes free, that's the only way I see it. I don't see LAFC paying a transfer market. And I don't really watch the English Premier League, but he doesn't really play with Manchester United that much, does he?
No, with Man City. He's Man City. He's not playing right now. He's injured right now, but even when he was healthy, he had sort of fallen out of favor. He's coming off the bench a lot. They're playing Gabriel Jesus and some others up front. He wasn't getting a lot of minutes. He is definitely, that's why I said I could see Man City very motivated to want to get him off the roster for a number of different reasons. So it's not a distraction. So the contract is off the books. I could see a number of different reasons why Man City would be willing to move him as a free transfer, which is how Zlatan came over to the Galaxy. He came as a free transfer. But again, look at what LAFC is doing with the young players. But conversely, you could look at Colorado or Columbus, the defending MLS champions. They just signed Bradley Wright Phillips. They just today signed Perry Kitchen. Yeah. Yep. So what are they doing? They're getting older, veteran, established players. Why? That's their philosophy. They think maybe they have one more run on it. They want these veteran players. They don't have the wealth of young players. They don't have the scouting system maybe that LAFC has. I mean, LAFC signed a couple of players from Ghana, and then they signed players from Korea. They're really, scouting the world. Columbus is scouting MLS. And so you look at Columbus, they're going to build with veterans, and obviously they have a very short game plan. LAFC is building this thing for the future and bringing young players over. So a signing like a guy like Aguero would have to tell you that for whatever reason this season is really important. We're gonna go away from our philosophy a little bit and try to win this season. It doesn't make sense any other way because everything else that they're doing points you in the other direction.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility, and I think there's a possibility a player like Aguero gets signed because I think if we look at the games, some of the the most important games, I think what I've seen, this is just my view, but I think some things that I've seen, I think they've missed out on some of the maturity, and learning how to close out games, right? Learning how to put teams away. And obviously, I know they're a young club. They're in the third, fourth year of of the MLS. But I think that is one thing they've done a great job recruiting, young talent, and that we're going to see in MLS for years to come. But I think that is a one caveat to their team is that maturity as a club and being able to close out teams, on the field and just different things like that. I think that's what they're missing. Is it Kun Aguero? I don't know, but I think they need a player that has a little bit more maturity, just to see that on the field and just be able to help put the game away. And if Rodriguez is going to be out, I think you fill that. I don't know if you fill that role with another young player unless he's electrifying and is able to make an impact. But if that's not their model and they don't want to go after Kun Aguero, I think wherever they spend that money on that DP spot, I think it's going to be very crucial, and I think everybody's going to be paying attention, and I think a lot of people are expecting it to be up top. Could you see them using that third DP spot if Rodriguez is out somewhere else?
Not unless like a great goalkeeper came available, and no one has ever.
You're not in love with their goalkeeper.
I think Colorado is the only team I could think of that has went out and signed a DP goalkeeper when they got Tim Howard, and again that was a special case. No, I think they need to use it up front. That's where teams traditionally spend their money. That's where you have a striker always has a more impact than a center back. Now you can argue that without a center back, a good center back, you're going to give up goals and you're going to lose games. I understand that argument, but an attacking midfielder, a forward, that's where teams traditionally spend their money. You can look through MLS where everyone at all the DPs, and that's what you'll see. When you talk about not having players to close out games, remember they did in their Supporter Shield season. They had Steven Betashour, they had Walker Zimmerman. Those were guys that knew how to close out games. You talk about closing out games up front. What you're talking about there with Avella or Rossi is just maintaining possession, not giving the other team a chance to have the ball. Well, what happens when the team does have the ball? I mean, I think in that last Champions League game, the last two goals, it was the defensive breakdown. It was the back line was not able to close out games. And I think that's what Steven Betashour and Walker Zimmerman brought. Some of those players, Segura and Murillo and those guys, they're going to be really good players. Tristan Blackman, but they were caught out of position and they were not able to close out those games. And that's what happened. And that's probably another reason why Jordan Harvey is back. I think you may see Jordan Harvey may turn out to be that guy that comes off the bench in the 75th minute to do that very thing, to help the defense close out games.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be very interesting on what happens, and I think just kind of close this out. I think Brian Rodriguez, and that this is the reason why we started this conversation. The Brian Rodriguez experiment never worked. I think it's fair to say that, in my eyes, it was in some way a failure, but it also I think a learning curve for LAFC because they learned that what could actually happen as a player from overseas saying like forcing their way out. They've never experienced this as an organization, as a league. Everybody seems to go along with what Bob Bradley says, organization. And Brian Rodriguez has always pointed out to me kind of be indifferent on his views and just different things on how he goes about it. And, I think I was never impressed with Brian Rodriguez's play, throughout the season. I know you brought up the stats of, I know a lot of people bring those up, but of him being the assist leader, but that to me, there was never one assist or any game that he impacted that anybody is free to tell me, but I don't think there's any game that he impacted that they won or it was the reason because of he won. And I think it's also a benefit for LAFC if he ends up leaving. Obviously, this is not the way you want a player to leave. And I'm also interested to see how they're going to recruit with Peñarol, and because they spent a lot of money to bring Brian Rodriguez here, and it didn't pan out, and now he's acting out. And when a player's acting out like this, we've seen things like that in other leagues and stuff like that. You're gonna have to retire, and I wouldn't be surprised if we hear tomorrow or next week or something. Hey, they sold Bayer, they sold Brian Rodriguez to, whether if it's Calgary or whoever. I wouldn't be surprised if that literally happens tomorrow. That literally happens Monday morning, or it might already happen as we're talking about it, because there's just so many things that you don't want to have a player. And I think they kind of knew that going into the end of the season, that Brian Rodriguez maybe wasn't fully on board. We can only see what we could see, but I was kind of catching on to a lot of those things. And I think I'm very interested to see how LAFC will scout moving forward with Peñarol, with a player that has aspirations to go to Europe, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that, wanting to go up there. But I think if you're LAFC, you got to see if as are these players coming for the right reasons to LAFC, or is their goal just to get to Europe? Or are they just going to come here for 1 year and expect to go to Europe? Or are they really going to help us foundational build what we want to build here? And then, yeah, take them to Europe. I just think in the case of Brian Rodriguez, he was just looking at it as a launch pad. Hey, I'll be there for a year and then I'm going to Europe. Well, COVID happened and things extended, and his play wasn't that good. And maybe in his eyes he was ready for that. And in his eyes, I think maybe in his plans, I don't think LAFC was in his plans for that long. And just the way you're kind of seeing these things, he's rushing his way out. So I'm very interested to see how they will move. They will recruit moving forward in South America.
Well, I think the bigger issue would be this: if this in fact does go south and Brian Rodriguez does leave in an unhappy situation, that would be the second DP mistake that LAFC has made in 4 years. With, remember, Andre Horta
Yep.
had to be sent back to Portugal, and at the end it didn't even seem like he was trying. I know he was hurt, but he didn't seem to be training, very hard. He didn't seem to really be to be applying himself when he was on the field. That was a situation where the team had to get rid of him. This seems to be the other thing around. But as far as the reason these young South American players come here is to get to Europe. I mean, if you're a 20, 21, 22-year-old coming from South America, MLS is not where you're going to stay. If you have any ambitions, you want to go to Europe. We saw that with Miguel Almiron in Atlanta. Pity Martinez wound up going to the Middle East. But those players came here with the goal of going to Europe. And I think Diego Rossi and Brian Rodriguez were both clear about that from the start. I don't have any problem with that, and I don't think LAFC does. But if the player is all of a sudden saying, look, I gave you a year and a month and that's it, and I'm gone. I mean, Miguel Almiron didn't do that. He wound up making Atlanta United a lot of money on that transfer fee. And I think LAFC wants to definitely make sure that it gets its investment back. This becomes another way for them to make money to, help afford their payroll. So, I don't think they'd be adverse to moving him, but I think LAFC wants to feel like they don't have a gun at their head when they do.
They do. That's what I'm saying. And that's what I'm saying. They've never experienced this as a club, as an organization. Someone, forcing their hand. And I don't really think LAFC is sitting in the best situation right now as an organization. And I don't think as an organization, you want to feel pressured, but I don't really think they have leverage in this situation. Yeah, they can hold on to him. Yeah, they can, hey, yeah, if you're not going to come play with us, but I don't think they're going to want to waste a DP spot. I know, granted, they have till April 3rd, but I think within the next couple of days, we also got to see what goes on with the CBA. But I think if you're LAFC, they're putting a tight situation because of Brian Rodriguez. He's forcing his way out, and I don't really think LAFC will have that much leverage. The only way I see them having that much leverage is if they hold on to him and say we're not gonna trade it until we get what we want. That's the only way I see that happening. But I don't know if they're gonna do that, because I think they may want to use that DP spot. They may want to get somebody within these next 2 months. You know, and not be forced on a deal that I don't know if they're gonna. I don't know. Like I know you mentioned the Almiron deal. I don't think they're gonna make. I don't know if they're gonna make that much money off Brian
No,
Rodriguez.
they're two different players. But
Yeah,
LAFC may have learned a little bit with Carlos Vela. Remember, there was Barcelona wanted Vela before last season, and it turned out after the fact that Vela was way. We had been led to believe that Vela was mildly interested, but take it or leave it. I can stay here. I can go there. Turned out after the fact that Vela really wanted to go to Barcelona, was very, very unhappy with the team for not sending them there. So unhappy that he broke the MLS scoring record. So it worked out okay for LAFC, but I do think that's in the back of some people's minds that their DP, their best player, they pissed them off by not taking seriously what he wanted to do. And maybe Brian Rodriguez is informing them a little bit on that too. Like it worked with Vela, but we got lucky. Maybe we should listen to this guy. If he's going to be here and be unhappy and be a distraction, maybe we should move him before it turns into that.
yeah, and I'm so glad you I just kind of want to wrap things up, but I'm so glad you brought up that point because I think with Vela, I don't think he was as aggressive. He could have used the media, and that thing the table could have turned on LAFC. But I think Brian Rodriguez, if you're Brian Rodriguez, this is the way to do it because I think I'm just gonna speculate here. I think his agent had been throwing deals to LAFC, and the LAFC was like, no, no, no. This is my speculation. The only way to make sure the guarantee is a move is what he's doing right now. And I don't.
And the fact he's in another country, that helps a
Yeah,
lot. I mean,
yeah,
if he's Jordan Harvey and he lives in Toluca Lake, just say, I'm not coming.
yeah.
I'm not making that 10-minute drive down the
Yeah,
freeway.
not at all, not at all. But I'm saying the everything Brian Rodriguez is doing, he's not coming back to LAFC. He's gonna be sold. He's going or whatever, and it's not gonna be the deal that LAFC may or may not want. I don't think it is, but the way Brian Rodriguez is doing and going about things, he's gonna get what he wants, and it's to go to Europe. Now, does he get to determine what club? Maybe, maybe not, but we'll see. But that is it. That is all the time we have. Ken, thank you for being on. Thank you for being on the live show, and thank you for joining me on here. We had a lot of discussions. Is there anything else you want to hit before we get off?
No, I'm talked out.
You're talked out. Okay. Well, let the people know where they can follow you.
LA Times, LATimes.com or on Twitter at KBaxter11.
Okay, Baxter 11. Guys, if you guys enjoyed this episode, and thank you guys for joining us on the live stream, make sure to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. You can also listen to this podcast on Spotify, wherever you get your music. You can follow me on Twitter at Gio Garcia LA, and make sure to follow us on LA Soccer Hub on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all over social media platforms. Just here to talk about LA soccer and what's going on. For Kevin, this is Gio. We'll catch you guys next time. Bye, everybody.